Welcome everyone to this new episode of my podcast, Trans with a Voice. In this episode, I have the pleasure to welcome Matty Leblanc, a trans woman from Moncton. She's a stylist, fashionista. She was in a movie, étoile, talking about the stories of queer Acadian. I'm so happy to have you on this podcast, Matty.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think we'll go to the main subject we want to talk about.
Ooh.
We want to talk about dating because, Matty, you did, I would say, an investigation? I don't know what to call it.
Full social experiment, yes.
So I want you to talk about it more in detail.
More in detail. Well, we're talking about dating. So funny, you've asked me if I wanted to be on your podcast, and at first I wasn't sure what we would talk about. You've had so many great people on and very like deep and serious conversations, and then we bumped into each other on our 1 year anniversary. And you're like, do you want to be on it? And the only thing that came out of my mouth was, can we do dating? Then I got in the car. I was like, why did I want to do that? But it's because I think there's so much to talk about when it becomes the subject of being trans and you're ready to date. Like you're dipping your toes in the pool for the first time as your new like full on identity, and you're totally into who you are and you know who you are. So like we mentioned earlier, like I've been out and presenting as a gay man for about 15 years. So I've been on these websites and on these dating apps, and I've been on Grindr since 2011. I did have relations in the middle, but that's how I kind of started. And people that don't know what Grindr is, it's kind of like the main queer dating app where it was prominently more gay men from the early years of like 2011, 2015, I would say. But now Grindr's trying to be very more inclusive, and I see a lot of trans sisters, trans brothers on there, and that makes me happy. But yeah, I've put on my profile a few years ago, like 3 years ago, that I was a woman, like a trans woman. And just like a semi photo of me, like kind of, you can see, but I had a little bit of facial hair, but my long hair and all the rest. 3 weeks ago, I decided to change my profile pictures to what I look now, and like full feminine and just me in my glory. And let me tell you, it is not the same app whatsoever. I think some people forget that, like a lot of my straight clients and family and my straight friends will kind of forget that, like, us as trans women, like for me, example, I was a gay man before, I dated gay men, but now that I'm out as a trans woman, people keep forgetting who's dating us. Who's the man who is interested in us and dating us or whatever? People keep forgetting that it's not gay men that's after us anymore. These are men, straight presenting, straight declaring that they are, except they prefer trans women. There's bi men, pansexuals. You know, there's also a spectrum of these guys that are not, they do not put themselves in the box of a gay man. They look specifically more for femme energies or trans girls. Let me tell you, it's been a journey. It's been 3 weeks, and dating straight men, or like I'm saying dating, I'm having conversations that I want to date on these apps. So let's be very clear. I'm very not into hookups, not into anything sexual. I'm looking to dates, chat, meet in public, conversations. So yeah, that's how I started my social experiment, was just switching the photos and seeing the messages come in.
And that's where you saw a big difference.
A huge difference. I went from having one message maybe once every 3 weeks to a month. From the first hour, 2 hours of having my new photos on there. I had over 30 messages. And at first it was, it was a little euphoric. You get this attention, and these straight guys or bi guys talk to you completely different from gay men. These guys know what to say. It's the compliments. They're used to chasing women. So they know they have to put in the work. And that's where I think we have to be a little careful, because I know for me personally as a girl and newly feeling beautiful, when you see another guy and he's kind of attractive and he thinks you're the most stunning thing in the world, or is what he's telling you, it's hard not to feel good. Like you're like, oh my God, there is a whole subculture of these straight bi fluid guys that I never ever knew existed on Grindr. So yeah, that's been very interesting.
So you got, like you said, you went from almost no message to like 30 message.
Like Regina George from high school. Yeah, I felt like the most popular girl in school. It was weird.
That's Mean Girls.
That's me, girl, but I wasn't mean, just like popular. But yeah, and it's more aggressive too. Like I did find it way more aggressive, and for some that were really great. So my social experiment was also like trying to have these conversations as much as I can, and trying to weed out like the sexual comments. And like, number one, that's hard to try to like tell a man like you're not interested in hooking up and you're just wanting to talk while he's clearly really turned on. So, and probably doing something else. So to keep these guys' attention and like have these decent conversations have been interesting. But at first, like the first chunk of guys that were schmoozing me and telling me all these things in the world, then I started to like question a few more guys about like, they didn't sound single, or they didn't sound that legit. So I started counting how many messages that I had. And then I was at 27. I was like 27 guys and 27 conversations that were going. Very exhausting, by the way. I've asked 3 of these guys. I was like, do you have girlfriends or wives? And they said yes. And then, of course, they started to explain why and whatever. I didn't care. I kept on going to all these 27 other guys and was like, flat out, do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a wife? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a wife? Out of 27 men, 3 were single.
Wow.
And that's where I was like, I need to start like really taking notes. And like literally, like I wrote down notes. Number one, for being careful for my protection as a woman, but also of my feelings. Like I'm out here just like any other girl trying to find a decent date, and potentially I'm 35. I'm willing to open myself to the idea of dating. I'm not saying I'm looking for a boyfriend right away, but I'm looking for someone to connect. So to try to like find the right tools to like weed out these guys, to filter out these guys. So to have these conversations and like keep going. But yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, especially for the ones that are aggressive and you say no. It's all of a sudden they've been chasing you for 2 days, and then you say no because of the reasons you're allowed to. For me, a lot of them were too sexual, when I kept on reminding them I was there to date and not anything else. So yeah, after 2 days of being asked, you say, sorry, I'm not interested, which is where I would start getting the trans hate of all of a sudden when you refuse a man. And I really wouldn't get this with gay men though. Gay men would be like, I'll find someone else. I don't care. I'm dead serious. I love you guys. I love all my sex positive friends. I love all of you. But it's so true. A more straight guy or a fluid guy, I've noticed like they don't like rejection from women. Saying no to a man from a woman's point of view is just not acceptable. So that's where I would get into like, well, you're a man trying to be a woman, and vice versa. Like just kind of going at me in like, and to be honest, those are hurtful words. Like, don't say that. But like, I've been queer like for 35 years. So like, I've heard it all. So for me, I'm just like more annoyed. I'm like, there you go. Like you use the only piece of ammo that you have to try to hurt me, which is now you're using your transness against me, when the only reason you started messaging me is because you wanted to be with me. in other ways than just dating. So it's to weed out these men that are also just going through their own things, and that can be dangerous. So be careful out there if it comes to dating. And I call myself the old auntie with my young queer friends to, just be careful. Don't give out your information. You don't need to answer to anyone. You don't need to give anything that you do not want, but keep your location safe, keep your information safe, and read your red flags. Your gut will tell you when it doesn't feel right, even though it's not. But let's keep in mind, and this is just a little message for my trans sisters out there, we have to be careful. And it can sound lovely at the moment, and he can tell you anything. And I'm not saying they're all like crazy psycho killers, but I'm just saying a lot of them are. And I'm flat out honest with these men too. When I don't want to meet or don't want to give a photo, I'm like, I don't want to get murdered. And they're like, you're serious? I'm like, yeah. And I know it's nothing to really joke about, but I have to put it a little bit in this light of like, haha, because it's the reality. And without going too dark, it's yeah, I do mention it on my dating apps that I don't want that to happen to me. I'm very clear.
And people don't realize that how, especially trans feminine persons, trans women, have to take this precaution, because when you look at the statistic of like trans people getting killed in a year, 95% of them are trans women or trans feminine persons. So we need to take these precautions. So I might want to add a bit of my story. I did not have a lot of dating experience. When I was younger, I was male presenting. And in this society, it is expected that men pursue women. So when I went on dating site, I never got message. So I never went on a date. But then when a couple of months after coming out as a trans woman, I went on Tinder. Like everyone's on Tinder. I was like, okay, I'll try it.
Oh, Tinder.
So I get on Tinder. I was on Tinder maybe like 2 weeks, because it was right before I took the decision to move out of Quebec City. So when I took the decision to move out, I was like, I don't want to have a relationship in Quebec City since I know I'm moving. That will just bring more problems.
That's a good choice, by the way.
Yeah. So I started dating on Tinder, and like I said, I never had any message. And then I get like you said, 20 messages in the first day, like the first 3-4 days, like 40, 50 messages. I was like,
Won the lotto.
That was euphoria. And these people, like you said, were all sending me a bunch of messages like, oh, you're beautiful. And I was sending some pictures of me. No nudes, by the way. We are ladies, me and Matty, so
we're good ladies.
Exactly. So we are not into nudes. So I sent those pictures, and the guys were like so aggressive, I would say, in their compliments. Was too much. There was too much frosting on that cake.
I love the way you say that. It becomes from like being compliments to being like, oh my God, that's frosting everywhere.
Exactly. So it was too much. That's where I noticed starting to talk to these guys. I was not out as asexual or panromantic at that time. I was like a trans woman dating cisgender male or trans male. So yeah, that was a different time for me. So I started messaging these people, these guys, and what I saw is some of them was for fetish. Like they really wanted only to meet trans women for their sexual pleasure.
Absolutely.
So when I talked to them, I was like, I don't want to have sex. They were like, you never had sex like with me. Like it's going to be the best sex ever.
Oh, I've heard that so many times. They all know each other, I feel.
There was also the part that people were looking to experiment. Like we're an object. Like You're test driving a car. Now I'll experiment sex with a trans woman to see how it feels.
Oh my God. I'm happy you say that because I do put that in the messages. I do tell them that I am not a car and you cannot test drive me.
I got people telling me exactly that. And it can be hard, like, for cisgender women to understand that situation we are put in. Like, you'll not see guys, like, ask a cisgender woman to experiment with them to see how it goes. No.
He would be arrested.
Yeah, that would never happen. But for a trans woman,
oh, it's a free for all.
We have to manage that. So we have these people that want to experiment, that treat us like an object, those that treat us like a fetish. There's also those, I got situation where people talk to me just to send me transphobia. I had multiple cases of that. Like,
that is like you have nothing else to do. Like, that is terrible. Like, we put ourselves out there and our hearts and our feelings, and it's a vulnerable thing to start dating, just for any human in general. But then you bring the trans issue into the thing, and it's a whole new ballpark. So just for us putting ourselves out there, I think that puts a lot of courage and the opportunity for others to just kind of come in and tell us whatever the F they want to. And that's not correct. And that's not how anyone's dating journey should feel like.
Exactly. Should be enjoyable. Should be safe.
Absolutely 100% safe.
So there was the situation where multiple people in 2 weeks I had to report on Tinder. But I got a couple of conversations. And one of the things I realized is a bunch of these people where I started talking more like about more what we are doing, personality, hobbies. These are things that I think both of us get our attention. A lot more than sex.
Tell me what your passions are and how much you love your life and your career and the love of things that you do. You have me. I'm done. And then ask me what I love to do as a passion. Oh my God. Take me away. More than any nudes or any sexual advances, 100%.
You get into, like you said, nice conversation, but after a while, even if you see clearly you're a trans woman, you know after a while that they don't understand what it means to be a trans woman. For example, they'll want to be discreet. They will not want to meet you in public. They will not understand, like, for example, having sex is different.
It's completely different. And it's weirdly their ideas of what they think sex is. Like, men will just be like, blah, 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 just telling you, like, what he wants to do to you as if, like, he's such a god. Like, I don't know. It's such ego and such what they think we want, but secretly this is what they want to do to you. And they just decided to let you know.
The other thing I noticed, like you said, you had a lot of conversation with people, really interesting, and there's a lot of them also that are not educated. When we look for a partner, we don't want to have to educate that partner because we need someone that will be there for us in a situation where we are not respected, our safety is at risk, and we are not dating to educate people. We're dating to find our partner. It lasted 2 weeks, and then I took the decision to move, so I completely forgot that, but it was a hard 2 weeks. It was euphoric at first, but then, like...
Your dream becomes a nightmare.
Exactly, your dream becomes a nightmare because there's so much people to filter out. At least a 90% of people to filter out.
Yeah, my algorithm is discreet, married, bisexual.
And to get to that 10% of good people, it's really hard and discouraging. And when you said also, for me, I never thought of like people that were not single.
I never thought of it until I had to take paper. And yes, I still use papers and pens and write down. Because I was like, when I like to talk about hypothetical things or like being like, well, the majority is, but it's not the majority. I was like, no, if I'm going to talk about Grindr in this light about these type of subculture dudes and the bros that are on there, I was like, I need to be actually like, what are my experiences as actually writing everything down and being like, there was 3 that were single out of 27 people. Like, that's 24 people that were on there. And keep in mind, Grindr is all like, who's in the closest to you. So I think that's another big wow boom moment that I've had was like, so there's about 25 men that live 4 blocks away from me, all around me, that messages me, that do this. At this point, there's more of these men on these sites looking for trans women than there's actually like gay men looking for gay men. Well, with the stats and like with all these blank profiles and realizing that all these profiles were actually men that had wives and like girlfriends but their main thing was specifically trans women. And that's where it's like, even I'm happy you mentioned Tinder because I just want to put a little side swipe for all my trans family that's out there trying to date. For me personally, Tinder was not, it doesn't really give you the option. So if you're a trans girl like us, it will just put you into women's, which I mean, fair, we are, but it exposes you to all the straight guys in there that are not looking specifically for like trans women or whatever. For me personally, like I like to be clear on that because we talked about my older photos earlier and I have my Instagram linked to my Grindr in case they want to go see if I'm real or not. And I do have some men being like, oh, you have old photos on there. That's kind of weird for me. And I'm like, well, these men have to understand that I was someone else before. I'm a proud trans woman. I'm a woman, but don't forget that like there's parts of me that I'm not deleting and I'm not going to delete it because you don't want to see the male version of who I was. So that's another thing too of like, they don't even want to hear about you being another way. So keep it safe on the Tinder guys when it comes to like putting your profile because it doesn't weed out like if we're trans or not. So it just kind of keep an eye out and just keep that in mind because I didn't know until I signed up and then I was thrown with all like the straight jockey guys. And then I started seeing like some bullies from high school that are, I know for a fact that like they're straight and whatever. And it could have put me in a very hostile situation with just people, the straight people that I already know that I don't want to start anything with. So watch out just a little bit for that.
Like for me, like after my experience on Tinder, I don't want to go back and I don't feel safe on any dating platform right now. And that's a problem that we don't have a space online where we can date safely. Because like you said, in Tinder, like for a trans woman, especially me that pen romantic only, seeing men is a problem too for another reason. But also it exposes you to people that are transphobic, that are like can be dangerous for you. And these platforms need to do a better job at creating safe spaces for us because we are part of society.
Well, I'm just shocked it's 2024 and there's not one app designated for trans folks that just want to date. Like I'm open to dating other trans people because I do see this a lot on Grindr, the T4T, which means trans for trans. I'm just kind of sad that there's not even like an app for people like us like that might be more curious and dating another trans person. Because what was interesting with like your former episodes too with Shane, yeah, I thought that was very, very important. It was a really, really good episode. If you guys didn't hear it, go check it out. But yeah, when it comes to that in specific.
If I can give like just a quick takeaway of that episode is that for someone that's trans, dating someone else that's trans can be challenging because of the dysphoria, because your partner can amplify your dysphoria because of their physical appearance, for example, because of certain physical traits. So it can be challenging. You have the openness, but it can be challenging on other part and can bring some relationship to break up. And just come back on another thing you said is would be nice to have a platform for trans people, but we know what will happen if that platform created. We'll get a bunch of chasers there, and it's not going to be a safe space for us.
I think for us, it will have to be like eventually a paying app. You know how famous people find other famous people? It's a paying app. It's basically like your own matchmaker. So like you have to go through a third party that will put you together. So that would be more safe. Like it would have to be like a guy that goes on there and pays and puts up like a full interview with someone from the company being like, are you legit? This is good. You're really looking for this. And then we'd be there to pick. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some type of how could dating apps could accommodate more trans people, queer people, but like mostly trans.
Yeah, I love your idea of matchmaking. I'm just thinking of some movies I saw, like some matchmaking movies, and
this could be a movie plot all at the same time.
That's why the solution is not having specific platform for trans people. The solution is to have platform for everyone that are safe and inclusive. That's the solution.
Safety and inclusion are definitely the two things. You're right.
So if we do a quick wrap up of all I would say the safety tip to date as a trans woman, we had first, like, don't give your contact info. Like, we meet in a public place at first. Don't exchange nude pictures for everyone, not just trans people. Make sure to know the person or use WhatsApp.
Trust your gut. I think at the end of the day, you can kind of feel or sense what they want out of this conversation if you really pay attention. And I think you can pick up red flags really easily. You can pick up really good green flags too. Like, I've had some really good experiences with some guys in the last 3 weeks that have led to really good conversations, and one that I've met. And the number one indicator for me was he invited me out to a social place that we all know and we all love from like the first few days of talking. So I was like, I knew he's willing to meet me, see me, and not scared of being with me in public. Just to say, like, that was a really good experience for me personally. Like, and then we met twice. It was very just chatty, and he was an openly bi man. So, but that took it took 2 weeks for me to be like, and talking every day to just be like, okay, yeah, we can meet out in public. And then the next time you can come over at my place, because we were talking about music. And so we decided to listen to music. So see, you do find very, very cool, genuine people. But I did take a lot of time and energy to, how do you call it? Filter. Yeah. To filter out these men. It took me 3 weeks. And this is just casually dating. I'm not saying I'm looking for a boyfriend, but for trans women that want to just have that dating experience again in their lives, or just want to have that special person. Yeah, I think those are just kind of little tips and tricks that I've written down in my notes.
Like you said, there's a lot of men on this platform that they will not want to be in public with a trans woman. They'll be ashamed of it. And that's why, like, when you're comfortable with the person to go in a public place together, it shows a lot about that person. It's a good first step.
It's a big green flag for me personally. And I do have to mention, because I don't think I was like very, very clear on like most of the people that were talking to me. I know I said at first, like, they were not single. So for the other ones that are single though, the sad part is they're all discreet also though. So like the other ones are out, but I mean, like, out of the married ones too, like I had to filter those, but then there was also like this discreet part. So they are single, but they're very closeted and discreet. So for me personally, that's also a red flag. But I just wanted to make that clear that like it wasn't just married and guys with girlfriends. Like the other half is all the discreet type. So it's, for me, it falls in the same category. You're still hiding a part of who you are. But I don't necessarily judge that. Just don't bring me into your discovery of trying to find yourself.
Exactly. And make sure they know what being trans is. Just ask some simple question about it. I remember I asked some questions. Some people I was dating, and it was like, ooh, they don't know anything.
Some no, and some it stays on fetish surface. The rest is like they don't see we're just objects, we're just Barbie dolls. Other than transness, they don't see a human.
And I remember like some people, sadly, when I just told them I was trans, they blocked me right away. Be open about the fact that you're trans. That will help filtering out. It can be sad because you'll see a lot of rejection at that point. Yeah. But people that will stay, and you know it's not a fetish, because it's easy to spot the fetish. They just compliment you all the time. There's too much frosting on that cake.
We're going to start using that because I think that's hilarious. But yeah, it's so funny because I don't have a sweet tooth. So like on cakes, I usually don't like too much frosting. So this really explains my dating life and sex life. Yeah. Like not too much frosting, please.
And I think that's pretty much all the tips. The tips and tricks of Matty in trans people dating life.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that all you guys have a good dating experience out there.
Just before we end also, I just want to mention that we talked a lot about like the difficulties of dating on Tinder and Grindr. But I know like multiple trans people that they were able to find relationship and their partner on those apps. So it is possible as a trans person, as a trans feminine, trans woman, to find someone on these platforms. It is not easy. There's a lot of hurdles that cisgender women will not have. But it is possible. So I just want to end on a positive note that I know people that were able to find partners on these platforms, but it is not easy.
And they're out there. Like I think some of them are on these apps. Like to see the amount of straight fluid guys that genuinely are attracted to us gave me hope that there's a lot more out there than I thought.
We are at the end of the podcast, so I just want you to tell our listeners how they can learn more about you and reach you.
Well, if you guys want to reach me or come and follow me at my Instagram at Matty1028, that's Matty 1028 all together. Also, I do hair in Moncton. I have my business at M&Co at 47 Mountain Road. So I take appointments through Instagram. I'm looking for new clients because I was away for 10 years in Toronto. So yeah, come and find me there. I'm usually so open. My page is very queer friendly. So if you have any questions or anything, especially any of my trans brothers and sisters out there, I will always be able to reach out back to you guys. So yeah, I hope to see you and thank you for having me.
Thank you to you. That was just an amazing experience. It was a lot of fun, and I'm sure our listeners learned a lot listening to this episode.
Okay. Bye.
Finally, I invite you to subscribe to my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, and to follow Trans with a Voice on Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget that a society that is more inclusive to the transgender community is better for everyone. Thanks, and see you next time.